Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the brutal, shifting alliances of the Kingdom of Congo from the 14th right up to the 20th century. But we aren't just going to look at this from a distant bird's eye view. Instead, we're going to actually experience this massive sweep of history by putting you directly into the shoes of a 16th century provincial governor. Picture this, you're a hugely powerful governor in a coastal province like Soyo. You're constantly walking this absolute razor-thin line. On one hand, you've got your required loyalty to the central king of Congo. But on the other hand, you have your own burning ambition, right? You want to grow your provincial army, secure your family's legacy, and seriously increase your personal wealth. So, what would you be willing to do to keep, and maybe even expand, your power? Look at how your chain of command actually shakes out. To keep your cushy job as governor, you have to send lavish tribute, we're talking ivory, copper, textiles, to the king in the capital every single year. It's this highly public competition among all the governors. But here's the catch. You can't harvest all that tribute by yourself. You rely heavily on the lesser lords and the local village leaders below you to extract those raw resources from the land. Now, to really wrap your head around the sheer logistical nightmare of ruling your province, you only need to know one crucial number: 0. That is exactly how many beasts of burden or wheeled carts exist in your entire kingdom. Seriously. No horses, no donkeys, no wagons, nothing. You might be wondering, why no carts? Well, think about the mechanics. Wheels create friction against the cart, and preventing that friction requires a heavy, fat-based lubricant. Before industrial oil, the absolute best source for abundant animal fat was domesticated pigs. The domesticated pigs just aren't native to this region of Africa. So no pigs means no fat means no lubricant, which means no functional carts. Because of this geographic quirk, your society has to rely entirely on human beings carrying heavy copper, ivory, and textiles on their backs. And that brings us to the grim reality of the situation. Because humans naturally do not want to carry heavy goods for miles on end, your kingdom relies incredibly heavily on constant warfare. You literally have to continually launch raids and enslave your conquered neighbors just to maintain the massive human transport network required to keep your economy moving. Which brings us to a massive turning point, the Portuguese trade dilemma. Picture the year 1483. Portuguese ships roll up to your coast, offering highly coveted guns and steel. But in exchange, they want human labor to work their newly built, highly profitable sugar plantations over in the Americas. Instantly, this creates a massive, fundamental conflict between you and your boss. Your king's power comes from having a massive centralized population in his capital to form a giant royal army. He wants to restrict the slave trade to protect his power, but you're an ambitious governor. You want to enthusiastically and illegally sell captives directly to the Portuguese. Why? Because they give you guns, and guns allow you to build up a massive provincial army to rival the king. And look, the Portuguese are not just passive traders here. They aggressively meddle in Congo's politics. By 1491, they bring Catholicism to the royal court, and the king converts. Later on, King Afonso I tries to create a strict royal monopoly to stop governors from trading humans for weapons. But the Portuguese traders, they simply bypass the king entirely. They start bribing provincial officials, like you, actively helping ambitious nobles acquire the guns they need to fund massive civil wars. By the mid-1500s, political survival in the Congo basically requires navigating a horrific cycle. Take the 1542 Civil War, for example. King Diogo secures the throne by making a deal with the Portuguese, basically trading thousands of his defeated political rivals into transatlantic slavery, just to pay for the foreign guns he needed to win. It's a brutal reality. To stay in power, you have to fight civil wars, buy foreign guns to win them, and pay for those guns by selling your defeated neighbors into slavery. But as you might guess, there's a massive blowback to all these endless slave raids. In the 1560s, the neighboring tribes you've been attacking finally say enough is enough. They unite into a massive force called the Jagas. They violently invade the Congo, and in 1568, they successfully capture and completely devastate the capital city. It literally takes years and the heavy assistance of Portuguese soldiers to finally drive the Jagas out in 1575. Even after you finally kick the Jagas out, the damage is totally done. The destruction of the capital means its massive population either fled, was killed, or was enslaved. The king no longer has the enormous centralized population he needs to staff his royal army. His central power is permanently broken, and he is now forced to rely entirely on the support of his provincial governors, like you, just to stay on the throne. And for you, this is a total game changer. Because you didn't lose your city to the Jagas, your personal army down in the coastal Solyo province is now hovering around 25,000 soldiers. Your provincial force is suddenly just as large and powerful as the king's own royal army. The big boss can no longer force his will upon you. All right, moving into our next phase, stagnation and decentralization. Feeling pretty good about your new military might, right? Well, you and the other provincial governors basically spend the next 2 centuries locked in endless, devastating civil wars. And here is the deeply tragic historical irony. You need guns to fight these civil wars. To buy guns, you raid your rival cities. But cities are exactly where the highly skilled craftspeople live. So by enslaving rival cities, you accidentally sell off all your kingdom's potters, toolmakers, and weavers to the Americas. You completely destroy Congo's domestic textile industry, basically forcing your kingdom to become 100% reliant on European manufactured goods. And that sets the stage for our final era, the 19th century pivot. Fast forward to the early 1800s, boom! A massive external shock hits. The powerful British Navy suddenly steps in and halts the transatlantic slave trade, which completely collapses Congo's weapons for slaves economy overnight. No more guns, no more manufactured goods. To adapt to this massive shock, your descendants, the new lesser nobility, completely transform the economy. They shift away from human trafficking and start building massive rural plantations to supply Europe's booming industrial revolution with raw rubber, palm oil, and peanuts. So why does this matter for the legacy of the governors? Well, because these massive new rubber plantations require workers to spread out across the deep countryside, the provincial capital cities are totally abandoned. Your urban workforce literally walks away. The lesser nobility out in the country gains all the wealth and power, which deeply decentralizes the entire kingdom. That central power you fought so incredibly hard to build, completely lost. And this is where the story takes a truly dark turn. This fractured, completely decentralized state makes Congo an incredibly easy target when European empires decide to carve up the continent. By 1888, following the Berlin Conference, Portugal simply marches thousands of troops in during yet another Congo civil war. But this time, they don't leave. They annex the kingdom into the colony of Angola, stripping away the sovereignty your ancestors fought for and sparking a grueling, decades-long colonial struggle that wouldn't actually end until independence in 1975. So, as we look back at centuries of shifting alliances and brutal decisions, it all leaves us with one incredibly provocative question. Did the ambition of those 16th century governors, who so eagerly traded away their own kingdom's people and skilled workers just to acquire foreign guns and provincial power, did they inevitably seal the tragic fate of the Kingdom of Congo? Definitely something to think about the next time you consider the true long-term cost of political ambition.